All righty, we are live. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Nikki Anthony, and I am the founder and executive director of Little Hands, Big Hearts, Little People Service Organization. And I'm really excited to present tonight, just as I am every month. We've had a really awesome lineup of our career exploration series over this year. We've had educators, we've had body fitness science gurus, we've had scientists last month, women in STEM. So I'm really excited to present tonight because tonight's focus is on law and medicine. So we have an excellent lineup of professionals, and they'll tell you a little bit more about themselves shortly. I want to open with our mission statement. And this just tells you a little bit about the heart of my organization and what we do and why we do it. The mission of Little Hands, Big Hearts, Little People Service Organization is to develop little people, and that's primary age children ages 3 through 9, into servant leaders who think beyond themselves for the greater good through explicit and intentional opportunities for character development, selfless service to others, and community based volunteering. And on that note, much of what we do is in the community. I actually just returned from Kenya because we were doing the community at large, the world. We were able to share and just support some works that are going on in Kenya and Nairobi and Mombasa, and actually in Uganda as well. So we are kind of expanding our reach as we continue to partner with some other organizations. Global Development Project is the main one for the continent of Africa. So I'm excited about what we do. This is a small part of what we do, and the purpose is to expose families to professionals and different career paths from a representational lens. So to see people who look like them as the experts. So I'm excited again about tonight. You're going to see some really awesome professionals, and I hope you have a lot of questions. So on that note, I will have each of them to introduce themselves. We'll start with Dr. Lewis, then we'll go with Judge Lee, and then we'll go with Genesis. So, Dr. Lewis, I will take you off mute. Oh, you got it. And you can share a little bit about yourself. And once you finish, Judge Lee, you can take over. And then Jen.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Anthony. I'm really very happy for the opportunity to be here to share my journey in the medical field. So thank you again for having me. So as Dr. Anthony mentioned, my name is Gregory Lewis. I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist. And I was discussing with Dr. Anthony earlier that I practice more of the gynecology than the obstetrics. So obstetrics and gynecology, obstetrics part is prenatal care, labor and delivery. Those are the doctors who deliver a lot of babies. So I still do deliver babies, but I'm more on the gynecology side where I do a lot of gynecologic surgeries. I do laparoscopic, robotic surgery, treat a lot of women with pelvic pain, endometriosis, fibroids, abdominal bleeding, ovarian cyst. So that's what my main focus is on. But occasionally I do go to the labor and delivery and do a cesarean section or deliver babies.
Oh, wow.
So that's where my skill there. So currently I work at the University of Florida. I am the director of the minimally invasive gynecology division. So I oversee a set of doctors and nurses in the area who see women with the pathology I discussed earlier, or mentioned earlier, fibroids, pelvic pain, endometriosis. I'm originally from Jamaica. I did medical school in Jamaica, and then I came to the United States for residency, where I did my residency in upstate New York in obstetrics and gynecology. I then went ahead and did a 2-year fellowship in minimally invasive gynecology at the Mayo Clinic here in Jacksonville, Florida, and then moved over to the University of Florida to start practicing full scope of gynecology and obstetrics as is. So that's what my journey in a nutshell. I'll tease out more as the forum continues.
Thank you. Thank you. Judge Lee?
Okay. Hi, good evening. My name is Shayla Lee. I am currently a county court judge in Duval County, Florida, which is mostly Jacksonville, Florida. My path here prior to that, I was a public defender So a large part of my legal career was spent in criminal defense. So I was a public defender for several years. I did all kind of cases. I started out during juvenile cases and specialty courts with juveniles. So we had a girls' court that I was the lead defender in. We also had a crossover court for kids that found themselves in dependency and delinquency. So it was a bridge of those two things together. I also defended people in misdemeanor cases, felony cases. Right before I left the public defender's office, I was in a division called special defense. So those were the worst of the worst cases, unfortunately, with dealing with abuse and things like that. Prior to that, though, I also worked in child dependency law. That was the first thing that I did out of law school. So my entire legal career has been spent, for the most part, doing public service, which is what I really love. That's what I focused on. My path there really started in undergrad with, I went to Clark Atlanta University. So I left Jacksonville, Florida, went to Atlanta. I did my undergrad studies in public relations, which turned out to be very helpful for my future career, because I learned a lot about how to communicate and deal with people and meet them at their level, basically, and try to build a foundation and bridge between myself and those people. So that was like I said, very good for me, because it does help. It helps me what I do every day. And so now I do sit on the county court bench. What I do on a daily basis, I preside over criminal cases, so misdemeanor cases. I also do civil court. I sit in first appearance court when someone is first arrested and we have to assess bonds. I also do traffic court and sign warrants. So it's been a great blessing to be able to live out my dream, and that's what I do.
Oh, wow. So just a little bit about me. I did a conditional release, juvenile conditional release in Tampa. So I guess I would have come before judges like you when I had kids that absconded, supervision and all of that. So, yeah. All righty. Genesis.
Hello, hi. So my name is Genesis. I'm 25 and I have been a nurse for almost 3 years now. I went to school in Valdosta State, and Ms. Nikki mentioned earlier that you guys are trying to go visit there. So hopefully that works out. But I went to school for 4 years at Valdosta State. Got my BSN, Bachelor's in the Science of Nursing. Graduated with that in May 2022, and I moved to Jacksonville to work at the ER. So I've been an ER nurse for 3 years. It's not easy, but there's blessings every day. You get to see the joy and the bad side every day of nursing. So it's not a perfect career, but it's gratifying. Let's see here. I graduated from high school in 2018, and even throughout high school, I stayed involved in like all of the medical clubs and all that stuff. So that's pretty much all I got for you right now. We'll be more later on, I'm sure. So
sure. All right, so we'll jump right into our questions. Hey, Nikita. Y'all got a shout out from Nikita. She's waving hey to the panelists. So what were some of the hobbies that you all engaged in as children that contributed to you becoming your current profession? So a judge, an obstetrician, gynecologist, a nurse. What were some of your hobbies that lent to your current profession? And we can start with Dr. Lewis, and then we'll go in the same order.
Okay, certainly. So one of the hobbies that I remember, or that I had growing up was just reading. I could read anything that I could grab my hands on. I would, from magazine clips back in the day, we didn't have all the technology we have now, the iPhone and the tablets that I see my kids with, and they want to gravitate towards that. Library was only open at certain hours, and you'd have to go to the library to get books to read. Encyclopedia was a big thing in my time growing up. I don't know if the children these days know what an encyclopedia is, but I just had a natural curiosity for what's happening out there in science. I gravitated towards science naturally, but even though I gravitated towards science books, I still read a couple of Hardy Boys, Bobbsey Twins. It was just anything I could get my hand to read. It was just this, deep curiosity to find out what's going on. And this help to develop my lit skills, communication skills for whatever career path you need. You are going to venture into. Rather, you do need that, to be able to communicate well. I'm sure Judge Lee will speak about that. And so, to expand your literary mind, it's important. For medicine, for law, whatever it is. So for me, growing up, that was a big reading, and I also had a I enjoyed science experiments. I loved the outdoors. I loved nature. I was fascinated by caterpillars. I'm not sure why. I would catch them, put them in a bottle, and even as a child, and I loved lizards. My mother was deathly afraid, so she would have me on the house with the lizards I would bring back. So just those were some of the things. Love for nature, love for reading are the two top things I think I enjoyed growing up. And then the other thing, as it pertains to, I'm from Jamaica, cricket, sports, like team sports was also important. So because, you know, getting up into your career, you're also going to depend on others. So team sport, if you're, it's also important to understand how you will to relate to others. That's, I think, is also a big thing.
I love it. Love it. Thank you.
So Dr. Lewis really stole my answer. Reading was my best, and the most amazing hobby I had as a kid. I tell people that all the time. I'm really sad that kids these days don't seem to read as much, but that was really how I got exposed to a lot of the world. Reading books as a kid was how I, meeting different characters, or they were set in different places. So it really was an exposure to different people, different cultures, and things like that. And I loved it. Like that really, I think, fostered a lot of my love for people. So reading by far is one of the things that was my foundational love. And nowadays I do a lot of it as a judge. Like a lot of my time is spent, whether it's reading arrest reports or reading complaints, reading motions, reading the law, keeping myself abreast of what's going on, what changes have been made. So reading it to me is one of those foundational things. And if you can find a joy in it, I think that really would help kids a lot, to expose them to different things. So reading was my favorite hobby. I also grew up in church, so I had some hobbies that I guess kind of were forced. I don't want to say forced upon me, but they developed from church. So, being a preacher's kid, because my father's a pastor, I was involved in everything. But one of the things that I like to do were like when the holidays came around and we got to do plays, like Christmas plays, Easter plays, I gravitated to those things. So, and I got to the point where I did it so much that as I got older, even in high school, they let me write plays and produce them and put them on myself, which was like very awesome. Again, it was just something that really took me into a different space. It taught me a lot of things, responsibility, how to put on a production, how to work with different people, organizational skills, those sort of things. So I was really big into theater and acting and stuff like that, which I didn't get to. I mean, I don't really necessarily use that on a daily basis, but the interaction with people, and just being exposed again to reading and writing, those are my favorite hobbies growing up.
Excellent. Thank you. Genesis?
Okay, I think we all had a lot of the same similar hobbies with us being in medicine and law. Like I said earlier, I was always more involved in the clubs. So I started off doing beta club in elementary school for like scholars. And then as I went up into middle school and high school, I started getting more involved with theater. I did theater for 4 years in high school. And then HOSA, I got involved in HOSA for 4 years and worked my way up to leadership and everything. And HOSA is the like medical professions club. So we got to go off and do competitions once a year, which is like you mentioned, teamwork is important. We used to do the quiz bowls and different things like that. So I always just stayed active and involved in clubs. And I see a lot of those things that I learned throughout those years in my career, even in theater. Because one thing you learn as a theater kid is even if you mess up, no one out there in the audience knows that you messed up unless you show it. So I show that a lot in my career. Like if I go into a patient's room and I'm pulling out a pill and maybe the pill, doesn't open the way I want it to, or I have to go out of order, or even if I don't pronounce the medicine the right way, they might not know that as long as you keep a straight face. So there's a lot of things I still use in my career for when I learned in my clubs. I also used to read a lot. I used to be more into dystopian books, though. I was never more of the nonfiction. I've always been more into like dystopian, the Divergent series. I used to usher in church, and then when I got to college, that's when I started doing the worship team. But I used to usher. They had to be there on time. That was the one thing that my grandma didn't play about. To be on time at the door. So always was helping in one way or another. So yeah.
Love it. So I love that the emphasis is my background, 14 years special education. I'm a teacher at heart, um, is reading. And just like Judge Lee said, a lot of children these days, they don't find a joy in reading anymore. And it's sad, but there are ways that you can build a print rich environment, parents. So there are things you can do that will promote reading. And I think it starts with you as a parent, just modeling the joy of reading. And that's called aesthetic reading. And that's when you read for pleasure versus effort reading, like Judge Lee does, like Dr. Lewis does, like Genesis does, which is like our work reading. When you're reading for information, you're trying to find out, what do I need to do? What's wrong with this patient? What's wrong with, this case? What happened? That's a whole different side of reading. But when you foster a love for reading, when it's a joy for you, then it's easier to move into spaces where you do have to read for information, effort reading. So just keep that in mind, parents, that reading is definitely a necessity for these fields, and it starts with bolstering a love for reading in their young age. So let's look at, what skills do you think are important for parents to look for or to identify in their children if they want to become, or if they're looking at maybe becoming an obstetrician, a gynecologist, a nurse, or a judge? What are some skills that parents should be looking for now in their children? And anybody can jump in.
Well, go ahead, Judge Lee, go ahead.
Well, okay, I'll jump in. So I think for my field, particularly in the legal field, it's the things that I just kind of discussed. Reading and writing. Those are foundations that you're going to have to use every single day with pretty much every task or thing that you do. So those basic skills of, being able to read, being able to write, but also a strong push on communication.
Yes.
And so I have 2 kids, and the dynamic is very interesting. My older child is 14, so she is absolutely a technology baby. She grew up with basically a smartphone in her hand, unfortunately, even at her young age. And so what I found is a lot of kids don't really know how to effectively communicate outside of that. And I'm not talking about I tell her chat speak, don't chat speak to me, talk to me. Use words, don't use letters and acronyms.
Yes.
Tell me something that I can understand so we can communicate.
Yes.
And I think that unfortunately it seems like it's becoming a lost art. But basic communication skills are essential to me to pretty much any career or field you could possibly want, think that your kid would want to go into. So, building on those basic skills, and then also just, if I'm being honest, an ability to have empathy for other human beings,
So good.
really to just be able to empathize with people, even if you've never experienced something that they've been through, but to be able to sit and listen and give someone the respect of trying to understand, where they're at or what's happening in their situation, just some common basic human decency. And I say these things, it's weird to have to say them out loud. It seems like common sense, but if I'm being honest, the world we live in now, it's maybe not as common. So
I feel you. So you talked about the communication piece, and there's so much more to communication, your written skills, but also other, like your behavior, your body language. That's another form of communication. So being mindful of those things. I call it text talk. Don't text talk to me. Form a full sentence, use punctuation. I don't want to, one of the things I see is kids put like an extra letter or three at the end of the word. And I'm like, what is that? Oh my God. Oh my God. And so for me, no text talk when you're dealing with me. If we're building the leaders, you need to know how to communicate. So I love that. Dr. Lewis, would you like to jump in?
Certainly. So for medicine in general, if you see your child pretty much curious about science, that might be a telltale sign. If you see, they're very curious about things that are science, questions. If they're gets a lot of joy out of helping others, you see your child as well, a little helper, want to see others feeling better even from a young age. I believe those are some signs that medicine might be a good field, and I'm sure Genesis will agree with me. The sort of wanting to help others, wanting others to feel better. That those might be some sign that they, a career path in medicine would definitely be a good fit.
Yes. Okay.
For them. And once you see these good signs showing up, just nurture it, encourage it, and see where it goes, because I believe those might, those will be some good traits to sort of pinpoint and to be able to foster for young children.
I love it. So did you all ever think that you would become your current profession, like when you were 5, 6, 10, 15, 18? Was this what you pictured yourself doing, or has it changed over time?
So for me, I always said when I was small that I wanted to be a doctor. It's so interesting, but as I said, I grew up in Jamaica. I grew up in rural Jamaica, so I didn't have somebody who I see as a doctor to emulate except those on TV. So it was a far-fetched dream that I want to be that, but I just never wavered or deterred from that, dream, as it were, at the time, that this is what I want to do or this is what I want to become. So at every step, as I continued in school, and I was asked, "What do you want to become?" I want to become a doctor. And I was like, I think at some point I was saying it enough that somewhere along the line, I believed it and that it could happen. But that was just a career path that I thought of and that I would want to be. And I think as I said it, the doors continue to open, people hear it, and then it was fostered by my parents.
I love that. Judge Green?
So for me, yes, this is something that I absolutely always wanted to. Well, let me clarify. So as a young child, it was my first love. It was my first career choice. From the very first time I remember announcing like what I wanted to be when I grow up, it was I want to be a judge. I said that at my preschool graduation. I tell that story. It seems kind of corny, but I did. I don't know where it came from, but that's kind of, it was, I truly believe now at this point, like God kind of speaking through me. I will say that as I got older, unfortunately, because I did not see a lot of people that looked like me in that profession or in that position growing up, there was certainly a time where I just kind of put it to the back of my mind, like, well, yeah, that would be cool. But, I kind of feel like at some point I was just like, well, I'm going to be a lawyer and that'll be good enough. That's as close as I'll get to that. So for me, when I got a little bit older though, and I've worked in my profession, I started to see actually more Black women. And the first Black female judge that was elected in Duval County was a few years ago, Judge Rhonda Peoples Waters. When I saw her get elected, I was like, now, wait a minute. So I could possibly, run an election here and win. And just to be honest, again, growing up in the South, I had those dreams, but it just at some point in time, it did seem like it had gotten away from me. So I think it's for me now, representation is a big deal. And so that's the reason why I love doing stuff like this, panels like this, so that kids can, I think you have to put it in their face sometimes for them to see it. Yes. And because I didn't see it, it kind of, like I said, got away from me, but it was my first love, and I'm really blessed to be able to do it and live out my dream now.
Love it. Love it. Love it. So Genesis, we're talking about if nursing for you, was nursing ever was that your first profession that you thought of as a child, and that's what you kind of followed through high school, through college, or did you start off wanting to do something different and it kind of morphed over the years when you got to college?
Got you. So it really kind of picked up for me, I would say more so in probably in middle school. But to start off, I wanted to be a vet. Like I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I did not think I wanted to work with humans at all. Then at one point, I thought I wanted to be a lawyer just because I like debating and like debates and all that stuff. But then I realized that lasted maybe 6 months, but it kind of picked up. I always loved kids. I wanted to work with kids, and the goal for me is to be a pediatric nurse practitioner. But it's just I got to where I am in the ER, and I love it. I love being able to work with kids 1 hour and then adult the next hour, and getting to see the variety I have. So no, my if you ask younger me, no, I didn't think I was going to be a nurse. I really thought I was going to be working with animals. I loved animals, and then as I got more so involved in the clubs, it's the skills. I've always been, which I didn't get to answer the last question. I'm sorry, I lost connection. But one thing I always noticed was I loved being hands-on, and I loved doing skills. I always I had a little brother, and every time a toy broke, I would want to go fix his toy. I could do whatever I could do to fix it, take it apart, and put it back together. And then I had a little sister, and I got even better because then she had animals. So now I would be playing doctor with her, watching Doc McStuffins, and would be doing like playing doctor. And I always thrived in what I call organized chaos. Procrastination, I don't recommend it. At the age of 25, I don't. But a couple years ago in college, I could get a whole 8-page paper written in a couple hours. So that definitely helps in the ER because you got a lot going on around you.
Yeah,
definitely. But no, I didn't think I would be a nurse. I knew I wanted to be in the medical field in one way. I didn't know if it would be with animals or with people. But like I said, probably more so in mid-high school is whenever I realized I wanted to be a nurse. But yeah.
Love it. So Judge Lee actually hit on something that I would love for you all to highlight or to talk about, expound on: the power of representation. Did you have someone, you talked about Judge Peoples Waters, Dr. Lewis, Genesis, did you all have someone that you, like, they became a marker for you in your life? Like, okay, I know I can do this because I see such and such in that place or in this position. And Judge Lee, feel free to share a little more about the power of representation in your life.
Yeah, so growing up, no, I did not have anyone initially that I did say, yes, this is somebody who looks like me, or you could, because even my when I remember getting sick and went to the doctor, it was that, it was not a Black doctor. This was in Jamaica that I ended up seeing as a child. But even that seeing that doctor at the time it was exciting for me. I'm like, I want to be like him one day because he's a doctor, but not looking like me. I would say, though, that if it was somebody that looked like me, and they probably were, but it was just, as I said, I grew up in rural Jamaica. It was not, you were not in the city or where there's probably a little more. I could have seen more persons that looked like me. But if that were the case, I believe it would have really gotten me even more fired up that, yes, But what it speaks to is, what you need in life generally is just the resilience, the push to keep going, because you have to have that inner drive, that inner fire, that you're going to be the first. You're going to tear down walls, on glass ceilings. Yes. You're just going to push because it is possible. So that sort of mindset is important, and it's important to have that sort of community around you. Your parents. I will tell you, my parents never went to high school, but they believed in education, and they were pushing me to do something that that they also probably never, it wasn't commonplace. So, but they, you as parents, we have to encourage and support our children. I think my family support was very big, even though I did not see somebody looking at me in the initial stages, but they're just believe in me that it's possible. You're my child. Well, I'm here to support you regardless.
I love that. So the power of community. So we'll stick a pin there because we're going to come back to that because it's very important to have community. And you talked about glass ceilings. You're shattering glass ceilings as, the in certain professions, in most professions, when we as people of color become the experts, there's a lot of resistance that we encounter. So I love that. So we'll come back to that and kind of talk about shattering those glass ceilings and breaking through barriers and all of that. Genesis, how about you?
So I grew up with really bad asthma. I still have bad asthma in the springtime, but I used to be in and out of the hospital admitted with asthma. So there was always, I ended up having to get like the little allergy injections a couple times a week. And there was always one nurse, she was a Black nurse, who happened to go into my church, who worked at my pediatric office. So I did get to see her, some representation there. And I didn't get those shots in many years. So I look forward to seeing her multiple times a week at my office. She's kind of the reason why I also wanted to go into peds, because I was a sickly child. That's like I said, I stayed in the hospital. But I would say probably one of my biggest mentors would be my cousin. She is now over the trauma. I forgot what she does exactly, but I know she works over trauma as one of like the head nurses in education and at Memorial Hospital in Fort Lauderdale. So she has always, even in like throughout nursing school, anytime I asked her a question, she was there for me. In high school, she was encouraging me. Even to this day, if I texted her a couple weeks ago about precepting a new nurse, and she was like, "Oh, that's you're doing great. That means that you're doing something right. They want you to teach other people. That means you're doing something right," and just offering encouragement. So I was thankful enough to always have either a family member or a close friend in a nursing field in some way. Another thing is there's so many different fields and like sides of nursing. It's not just you're this type of nurse. There's like a good 100 at least different varieties of nursing in some way. So seeing that I don't have to stay, I decided to be ER nurse, I can always go into education or do this, and I always have someone I could talk to in some way. I was thankful, but it definitely takes a community.
I love that. And Genesis just brought up another point that we'll get to: mentoring, having someone that you can look to. I think is very important, having that ear, that person as guidance, so we'll get to that. But Judge Lee, how about you?
Like I said, it wasn't, so I want to clarify, it wasn't that I didn't ever see like a Black female judge, but I only knew one and she was the first, and at the time the only Black female judge in Duval County, Judge Pauline Drake. She actually, and oddly enough, I didn't know her as a judge. When I first met her, I knew her as Paul's mom. I was on a drum line with her kid, with her son in high school. And so I just knew her as Paul's mom. It wasn't until my mother came to one of the events, and she saw us talking. She was like, "Do you know who that is?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's Paul's mom." She's like, "That is Judge Drake." And I was like, "She's a judge," and again, it was one of those eye-opening moments of like, oh, so it is something that we can do. So it was good to see that as a kid, because I don't think it was ever that I thought I couldn't do it, or that the skill set wasn't there. Like it wasn't like a feeling of not being good enough necessarily. It was just a feeling of, will they let me in that space?
Right.
more so than thinking that I wasn't able to do it. Like, not to brag on myself, but my parents always built confidence in me, because they taught me to do things in a certain manner, to learn, to focus on my education, and academics were always pushed.
Yes.
So it wasn't, again, like, and I think that that's something that's important when we talk about representation. Sometimes it's not really necessarily about not feeling as though you're good enough. It's not that. Often it's more so of being able to be in those spaces and know that there is a place for you, to be accepted and to be able to thrive. And also, I think specifically in my case, to know that there are different pathways to get to where you want to be. So, when I saw Judge Drake, she was appointed by a governor. I don't want to go into politics, but growing up, once I learned about the politics of Florida, I was like, oh, well, I don't know that I would necessarily get appointed by a governor. But again, when I saw Judge Peoples Waters get elected, it was like, oh, but there's this other path. Like, I could do it that way. And so it was that type of representation. It was the more so knowing that, like, yes, we can get into those spaces, and there are different paths and different ways to get there. I think all of that goes into representation, not just, the seeing of the person, but I think the physical presence shows you, again, the ability to get into the space, and builds that confidence, and kind of shows you a different path if maybe you thought that there were barriers there. And that leads into the mentorship, like you talked about, because then you meet other people and you learn, like, oh yeah, there's a different way to get there.
Yeah, that's really good. So go ahead and talk about the mentorship piece then. Any mentors that stick out to you for yourself, and how are you, if you are at this point, or if you plan on getting to that, maybe looking at mentoring younger people? I think this is a great space, being able to show you can do this, and moving forward. But both of you can kind of talk about mentorship.
Yeah, so absolutely. I've definitely been blessed to have some great mentors in the legal field. Florida, Jacksonville specifically, the legal community here is kind of like a little big family. And it is full of a lot of very intelligent Black women, and they carry a lot of the legal community here. And they're in a lot of different areas. Like, for example, one of my best friends, she is the director of juvenile defending the juvenile defender's office and the public defender's office. She mentored me my entire time at the public defender's office. And not only that, but I was able to see a lot of people call on her. State attorneys would call her and ask her questions about the law, and ask her questions about how to move and how to do certain things. So I've definitely been blessed to be able to have mentors like her and several other women that I knew I could call on to ask them questions, and they'd be receptive. And so I think it is, I've been taught that also it's important to pass that on to someone else. Like, I'm not going to sit on the knowledge that someone gave to me and not, reach back and pull someone up. Like, how selfish is that, right?
Yeah.
So it is definitely events like this. I love doing events like this. Like, anytime someone calls me and says, will you come talk? If you say kids, I'm there. And that's not to, frown upon adults. They're cool. But again, I think that it's important because our kids can get caught up in so many different things, and it's a different world than the world that we were raised in. And so I think it is very important that we reach back and teach them and guide them and help them along the way.
I love it. Love it.
Yeah, indeed. I agree with Judge Lee. Mentorship, is very important, especially in these sort of career paths. You do need to have somebody who has been down that road to try and guide you, direct you, help you up when you have questions, when you're at crossroads about which way to go, which way to turn. They have resources, meaning one, they've been down the path, and they also will have other sort of we use the word connections to be able to help you, or other tools to help you get over, whether it's self-doubt or whatever obstacle lies in your way. Because chances are the mentors would have been down a similar path. They would have had the whole, whether it's financial struggle, whether it's, personal struggle, family struggle, they would have had been over those hurdles. And so they're very well positioned to kind of guide you through that. So I have mentors who have been able to say to me, when I was struggling with making a decision, and they try to deconstruct for me, what is that you really want? What do you have in front of you? What resources do you have to work with? So those are some of the things that I believe good mentors are able to help you with, and just giving you also good advice. One of my mentors like, Greg, surround yourselves with people who are like-minded, friends who are going in a direct, in the right direction. Those are nuggets of encouragement or guidance. Really, when you lie in your bed at night, you're like, okay, this is good advice, and it helps to shape, the way you carry yourself, the way you, relate to others, and the way you decide to allow your lives to be directed. So mentorship at every aspect of, I believe, your life, whether in high school, college, or in, med school, law school, nursing school, mentors are always going to be very important to get you to the next level. And I've changed mentors because I've had mentors, as I said, in the different stages, areas that you have. Okay, this person was very instrumental in getting me to this point. Now they're not experts in this field, but hey, here's somebody who's an expert in, going through medical school or going through my residency in obstetrics and gynecology, and you need those persons to help to propel you to the next level.
I love that. So you brought out a really good point with mentors and the importance to me of building strong relationships, because you can have someone and not get out of that, dynamic, what you're supposed to, because either you don't want to open up, you're guarded, you think you know more than you do at this current stage, right? So does anyone have any insight that you could offer students, that you can offer parents to help their students prepare for having a worthwhile mentor? Because you can have those people in your life and not receive the benefit of having them in your life because you don't know how to interact correctly. So I guess, what advice would you offer to students and parents, any of you, about building strong relationships with mentors?
I would say a key thing would be, don't feel as though you're just tied to one mentor, and maybe not even at one time. Like you said, different people, like Dr. Lewis was saying, may serve different purposes. This person may be able to help you specifically in a career aspect. This other person may be able to help you with finances, or understanding how to navigate, how to do your job, or how to balance, work and life, and, if you're going to have kids, or if you're going to have a spouse. So I don't think that you have to stick to just one mentor. And then that way, you're able to, I think it's also going back to that communication of being open and honest with this person of what your expectations are. Like, what do you see this relationship being? What are you expecting this person to help you with or do? If you come to the table and kind of lay those things out and ask them those questions ahead of time, like, are you able to do this? Or, and they may be able to say, well, no, I can't do that for you, but I can introduce you to this person who could maybe help you with that, So being open and honest about what your expectations are and asking those questions ahead of time is very important. And then also, just again, seeking out different mentors for different aspects, I think is very important to make sure you have the best, like you're optimizing those relationships, like you said.
I love that. I love that. So we have one question from Tamara Foreman. It says, beyond speaking platforms, and I'm guessing she's asking you all directly, how else do you engage youth? How do you suggest youth connect for mentorship? So.
So I'm in a local church here in Jacksonville, and so that's where the young people are at my church. I do speak to them. We do have different professionals within the church that we have that would give talks about our profession from time to time, and that's one way. That's the main way I engage persons within my community. And then the other half of the question was,
how can youth connect for mentorship?
Well, through this forum, that's when Dr. Anthony asked me, I was like, oh, am I on call? Am I not on call? Am I available? And then once I saw I was available, I'm like, you know what? This is a good opportunity to, engage
Mm-hmm.
with persons. So, and I believe she will give our contacts at the Dr. Anthony will give our contacts at the end. If somebody reaches out to me and I have the time, the bandwidth, I'm happy to engage and to, and as Judge Lee said, if I don't think I have all the resources and I know somebody else who has the resources or can point somebody in the right direction, certainly I would use that leverage to connect that person with those who I think would best suited or better fit or better able to help them.
Got you. Thank you. Genesis? I think you froze. Judge Lee, you can jump in. Jen, if you can hear me, you can jump back in after she's finished. Go ahead, Judge Lee.
So yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, to answer the first part of the question is typically I do get invited to talk to kids. Sometimes it'll be a career day at a school or something like that. Same thing with Dr. Lewis. I'm one of those type of people where if you ask me and I have the ability to do it, my schedule is clear. I sometimes will move schedules around to do that just because I think it's very important to, again, make sure that we're reaching back and mentoring kids. And it's important for them to see people that look like them in professional settings and careers across the whole spectrum, not just like a judge. Obviously, even as a lawyer, I would do that. When I was in college, I would do that. So it's always interesting to me. I think sometimes people don't just ask, like a lot of times people just, and I've had that happen in several different ways, be it, church members saying, hey, my niece or my cousin or this person, wants to talk to a lawyer. Can you do it? Sure. Here's my number. Here's my email address, just have them reach out to me. I'll tell you what's said about that is a lot of the times they don't. They don't actually reach out. I've actually, given my information to people and, the young person, I think sometimes it's a matter of being shy or thinking that people don't want to or don't have the time for you. But that's why I say, just ask, if you don't ask, you don't know, right? And so maybe they won't have the time, but maybe like Dr. Lewis said, they'll pass you along to someone else who does have the time, or they may not have the time right then, but say, okay, well, I can't do that, but how about we do this, later at a different time.
Yeah.
So I'm one of those kind of people that just has an open door policy. So I'm not hard to find. Professionally, obviously, as a judge, a lot of my personal information is not out there. But if someone calls my office, I've had people come and literally just knock on the door. And my assistant's like, there's a clerk out here that wants to talk to you. I don't know what she wants. I think she just wants to talk to you. And I'm fine with that. So I encourage kids to just, ask. Look, if you, look up your local politician or, look up a judge, look up a doctor, look up a nurse, and just reach out to them on social media or, message them and just ask them, hey, listen, do you have time? Would you be willing to do something like this? I think you'd be pleasantly surprised at the number of people that will respond and be receptive to that.
I love it. And she really was that easy to reach, y'all. She really was. I just said I did the same thing she just suggested. I was like, well, all she could do is say yes or no. Hey, you want to be on my show? And she was like, I'd love to. And I'm like, so here she is. So she keeps her word. Thank you.
Personally, I do endorse what Judge Leah said. Just ask. If somebody asks, take that bold step to ask. Oh, I need a mentor, or oh, my child needs a mentor. Can you, or do you know anybody? But reach out to people if it's whatever area they're interested, whatever field they're interested in. Go online and find their handle and their social media handle. Reach out to them, and you'll be surprised. People are like, oh, people will be honored. As I said, once they have the time, they'll do it, and if they don't have the time, they'll pass it on. Yes, you might get some shutdowns. People are busy; they don't have the time. But just keep knocking, keep pushing. Have that persistent, persevering attitude, and you'll be surprised at the opportunities that will come. Come knocking.
I love it. So we have only a few minutes left. I wanted to get to this question of character. So Judge Lee brought up empathy earlier, but what character traits do you think are important for your respective fields and professions?
Okay. Well, I can go first. The empathy part to me is really big in the legal profession. And the reason why is because I tell people the best way for me to explain it is when you're at the courthouse or when I meet a client, I'm typically meeting someone in what's probably the worst or one of the worst times of their lives, right?
Mhm.
And so you have to be sensitive to that. And also sensitive to the fact that that person is not on an island by themselves. So there's family behind that person. There's also another person on the other side of that case, the opposition. They have feelings. So empathy and respect to me are always very big. They are strongly pushed in my courtroom. Everyone will tell you I run my courtroom like my personality. I'm very cool and laid back, but the minute we are not being civil or we are not being professional or respectful of people, then you can see a very different side of me immediately. It will be shut down. Because I have a very low tolerance for people not treating other people with respect. That's one of the things I've always just been big on, because I don't have to agree with everything you say, right? A lot of times, obviously, especially as a criminal defender, I didn't, like there were definitely times where I didn't necessarily agree, but it's about still being able to give that person the respect that's due to them just because they're a human being.
Right.
And so that comes with also being able to have a temperament of patience, knowing when to listen and stop talking, and allow yourself to receive information, because a lot of times we do come into things with preconceived notions, like you think you have it figured out. Even as a judge, I have to, I may read pleadings and on the surface, it looks like, oh, this is pretty clear cut. But then I have people come in front of me, and when I start listening, I'm like, oh, well, that's not, she meant this actually. And so then that may turn the case completely different, So being able to be patient, have empathy, and have respect, I think that those are some of the most foundational character traits that will take you across every profession and will get you so far in life. Because when you give people respect, it's automatically returned to you. I tell people that all the time, especially with my daughter. I've given her the example of, if someone is, acting irate, or, for whatever reason, they're being aggressive and, just over the top with you, maintain your composure, right? Don't let them get you out of your space. And if you do that and you continue to talk to them in a level tone, and you're giving them respect and you're letting them talk, after a while, I promise you, like, that person on the other side gonna realize, I need to bring it down, because this person's not coming to where I want them to be. So they're going to come down to where you are. So I think that those are, I can't stress it enough, just having empathy for people, having respect for people, and being patient and listening. I think those are the biggest character traits you can have that would make you successful, not just in the legal career, but, across all fields.
That's awesome. I call it what you just described. When I'm doing trainings for trauma-informed care, I say be the thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the temperature, and your voice, you bring the calm. If they're going to be irate, let them be irate. But you come in with your calm, your voice quality, all of these things, and you set the tone for what you want. And I think it kind of begs people, to be drawn into a place of respect. Okay, well, she's not doing that. He's not doing that. So I got to adjust myself. So I love that.
It's commanding, like I tell my daughter, it's treating people how to treat you, teaching them how to treat you without having to say it. You're just setting the example of, this is what I'm bringing, so you need to get like me, essentially.
And it does work. It really does work. Because this is about, even when I was in the classroom, people say, you always talk like, I've always pretty much talked like this. But I never had a year where I didn't have my kids make the gains that they needed to. There was never a year that happened, because I'm consistent. And I think that a lot of that is consistency also. So Dr. Lewis, how about you? Can you hear me, Dr. Lewis?
Oh, sorry, you did cut out for a second. Okay. You wanted me to? Well, no, certainly. Judge Lee did summarize it well. It's like she was looking at Judge Lee was looking at my notes. Be a good listener, being empathetic. These are all traits that transcends any sort of profession that you go into. So these are traits I believe that young people, children, our parents can foster their kids to cultivate. It's being a good listener. I see patients every day, but I have to listen to what they're saying. They're telling me their diagnosis. They're telling me their complaints. The word empathy is, you have to be empathetic. No matter how skilled I am as a surgeon, the patient does not feel that they can trust me, that they won't pour their all out. They won't want to see me again. Other traits, attention to detail, is important for this profession. And I'm sure for Judge Lee too, she has to read every line, and interpret every line of the law. Paying attention to detail is also very important. Being focused. These are just traits that we just have to, foster in our children as they continue to grow, to ensure that they're on the right path in whatever career arena they want to explore.
I love it. So we are right almost at 8 o'clock. Is there a way that people can contact you if they want to learn more, if they just want to say thank you even? How can they get in contact with you in a way that you are okay with being contacted? And I'll throw them in the chat if you have any ways.
So, like I said, I do have on Facebook.
My email is.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, please go ahead. I'll come out after.
I'm sorry, Dr. Lewis. I didn't mean to cut you off. But so yeah, like Dr. Anthony said, she actually reached out to me on Facebook Messenger, which I've been told by my daughter is an old people's app, but that's where I'm at. The notifications are easy for me. I'm not piling up a bunch of apps on my phone. I refuse, so I don't tick on the talk, but I do still have Facebook. So messaging me there. Also, like I said, my email address, it's actually slee and then the number 1 at coj.net. It's the city of Jacksonville. So that's my professional email. So, you can email me directly there. But yeah, either of those ways are perfectly fine ways to get in touch with me.
Got you. I added that in the chat, and let me put Facebook. It's Judge Shayla Lee.
I believe so. It should be. It might say Judge-elect Shayla Lee, but you'll get to it if you just put Judge Shayla Lee in there.
Okay. Dr. Lewis, is there?
Right. Yeah, I don't have a big social media handle. But my email address, gregory.lewis@jax.ufl.edu, would be a easy way for communication.
Got you. All right, Genesis, you're back with us. Is there a way that people can contact you if they want to?
Yes, I'm so sorry, y'all. I've been having the worst connection issues. I've been trying to hop back and forth between my hotspot and my Wi-Fi to see which one works. But if you have any questions, you can always just email me. It's just my first and last name, so genesisrembert@gmail.com. Or I see you guys at the events that I volunteer at, so you guys can always just ask me there, or Instagram, any social media. I'm fine with anything. It doesn't really bother me at all. I don't mind. So.
All right. So any final words that you have for our audience just before we call it a night? Anybody?
If I can say one thing, I would say I strongly encourage kids to just be bold. A lot of times I think that fear is what stops us from doing a lot of the things that we want to do in life. And so I try to encourage my kids that, like, even if you are afraid, like I've done a lot of things afraid,
Yeah.
it's sometimes it's uncomfortable. But I tell my kids, you have to get uncomfortable sometimes if you want to see growth. Like, discomfort and going through things, it's a process, and we're always wanting to grow. And so if you get to a space where you're very comfortable, I always challenge even my friends, like, when you get too comfortable, like, well, what's the next step then? Like, let's not just sit and, it's good to get in a good space. I'm not saying that, I'm very happy with where I am, but I think it's important to remember to be bold and to not let fear paralyze you. So I think it's important for parents to allow their kids that safe space to be able to be bold, to be audacious, especially kids of color. And I'm not saying that all kids don't need that, but particularly kids of color need to know that it's okay to be bold. It's okay to be confident. It's okay to stand in that. And don't let anybody else define who you are. You set that yourself.
Yeah, I want to kind of piggyback off of that. I would definitely say, not only just in the careers you guys have heard about today, but just in life in general, you have to find your way to do things. That's the best way to be successful, whether that's in school. The way you see your classmates study may not be the best way you need to study. Because your classmates better at taking notes and writing down flashcards doesn't mean that's how you're going to learn. You have to find out what works best for you. I did that every day of my career, all because this nurse is doing things in this order and she's, writing down these notes and things. Doesn't mean I need to go and do things in this order, because I might be better and quicker at doing this first. I will also say, when you're listening, make sure that you're listening to understand, not just listening to respond. Communication is huge in everything that you do. That's something that, whether that be in a relationship, your career, you have to make sure that you're listening to understand, to help with empathy in everything that you do. And as far as school goes, from personal experience, you don't have to get straight A's. You don't. We encourage straight A's. However, if you get one bad grade, I promise you it's not the end of the world. I went from being I had never seen a B in my life at all until I was in nursing school. And then I got one B. It's like an 85. And I thought my whole career was over with. But no, you don't. It's okay if you're not perfect. We're not expecting perfect. We're expecting you to bounce back and do the best that you can. That's all that anyone's ever asking for. That's pretty much all I have to say for that.
I love that. So she's encouraging resilience, academic resilience. And that's a really good
Absolutely. Doesn't mean go making D's and C's on purpose,
Yes.
but if that's the best you can do for that time being, it's okay. We can try again. Just don't let that defeat you. You gotta stay at it.
Be bold. Do better. Be bold and do better. All right. Dr. Lewis?
Well, certainly. I just want to say to parents out there and every child out there listening, you can do it. And it's not just the words or wind. I really believe that we all have it in us. God has given us the ability to push forward, to press forward, and to be the best version of ourselves. And that's all you can do, is to ask to be the best version of yourself, whether it's going to be law, medicine, or whether it's going to be, a sort of working with your hands, whatever career path, you can do it, but be the best that you can. Start now, just being a person of excellence. You can be excellent in whatever you do, whether it's in sports, whether it's at school, in academics, wherever you find yourself. Just try to develop that excellent spirit. I'm going to be the best that I can be, and I'm going to ensure my child be the best that they can be. Give them the resources, even when it's short or seems to be lacking. Use what you have, and a little is much when God is in it. That's all I can say. And I've proven that over and over in my own, life, that put God first and keep moving, keep pressing on, and you'll be the best person that He has made you to be.
I love it. Thank you all. This has been so wonderful. Thank you. So we're going to call it a night. This upcoming month, for anybody in May, we have our Serve Day on the third Saturday. I'll be posting and sharing on our social media so you can see. And if you want to come and serve with us, we serve the unhomed and the transient. That's where most of our work is, downtown. So come on out. We have a wonderful time just loving on people and treating people with dignity, kindness, and respect. Those are some of our core values organizationally. So that's what we do. That's a little piece of what we do. Next month, we'll be back with another segment for career exploration. And I'm excited. Thank you all for sharing with us. Thanks to our audience for being with us. And we're going to call it a night. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.
Thank you so much.